So what happened between Zoids Chaotic Century and Zoids New Century? In this video, I'm going to discuss that. It's going to be 100% theory, so none of this is factual. I've already kind of went over the factual information between what might have happened between these series, that being evidence in New Century, for example, the Ultrasaurus with its custom gravity cannon, and the Death Stinger tail as well featured in New Century. So instead of factual evidence, we're going to have some fun today and go over some theories. One theory in particular I really want to discuss is the black box theory. So I don't really have much of a script for this video, I just have all these ideas in my head that I kind of wanted to put out there, so I thought I'd set up a camera and record it. So I hope you all enjoy this kind of wild ride of a theory video. Anyway, let's get into it. So essentially what the black box theory is, it references the black box system found in Zoids New Century, that being the organoid system that they talk with Dr. Taurus about. It's featured in both the Berserk Fury and the Liger Zero. It's supposed to be a system that lets the Zoid adapt and works as if it had an organoid in it, for example. Now these are built into the Zoid and can't be removed or put in from at least our knowledge from the series. So essentially, this is what the theory is. The black boxes in the Berserk Fury and Liger Zero respectively are actually Zeke and Shadow respectively. That would mean the Liger Zero and the Berserk Fury are both the Xenobreaker and Blade Liger. Now let me explain this. The way we can connect these two a little bit is with the Zoids Chaotic Century manga. If you haven't read that, these are kind of spoilers, but if you already know what Zoids are featured in it, not too much of a spoiler. Essentially, at some point in the manga, Van gets a Liger Zero, and Raven gets a Berserk Fury. So we can already kind of put the pieces together here. That's why this theory might not make sense if you've only watched the anime, because well, how can a Xenobreaker become Berserk Fury, and how can a Blade Liger become a Liger Zero? It all happens in the manga. How it happens, maybe I can leave up to you to go and read it, but essentially that is what happens within the manga. Now with that, we have what actually happened between Chaotic Century and New Century. Here's where we can speculate. The first thing we'll consider is we don't know how organoids actually die. We see them become frozen at multiple points within Chaotic Century, for example with Zeke and Shadow respectively, both having this happen to them, Shadow twice, Zeke only once. They're able to be revived with Zoid Magnite, or in Shadow's case the second time he passed, the Zoid Eve brought him back. So you gotta wonder, is this a final death for an organoid? Perhaps not. And if that's the case, what truly is the final death for an organoid? Perhaps that final death actually is, for example, turning into a black box, or the organoid system we see in New Century. So as we don't know how long it's actually been between Chaotic Century and New Century, judging by everything that's told and all the information we have, we can assume it's at least 100 or so years, if not more, because things have really changed between the war-torn Planet Z of Chaotic Century and battling Zoids to sport of New Century. It's a whole different ballgame. So within that time, perhaps there is a point where Zeke and Shadow both die. Of course, Raven and Van will eventually die, they're just people. And when it comes to the ancient Zoidians like Fiona and Reese, we don't really know much about them either. So we'll disregard them for now because I'm not sure how they fit into this. So let's entertain the thought that an organoid's final death could just be merging with the Zoid that they've partnered with, for example. Could be any Zoid they're choosing, doesn't really matter. For the purpose of this, we'll say it's the Zoid they've been partnered with. So in Shadow's case, this will be the Berserk Fury, and in Zeke's case, this will be the Liger Zero. And that would make a little bit of sense considering why the Liger Zero is so rare within New Century like they were discussing, although of course this organoid system was unknown. The fact that it's rare is actually consistent with the fact that the Blade Liger is the only Zoid of its kind within Chaotic Century. The Berserk Fury is where things get a little bit more interesting. If you remember, it's actually found in the ocean, buried in a giant metal crate with the symbol that looks like the shape of an organoid etched into it. Of course, this could be argued it looks like the shape of the Berserk Fury. Same shit. It doesn't really affect this too much. We're gonna wonder, why was it locked down there in the first place? And here's where a bit of the fun begins. Here's what I think might have happened. Of course, eventually Raven was going to pass away. He's just a person, as is Van. However, the relationship between Raven and Shadow is a lot different than the relationship between Van and Zeke, because they also have Fiona and Ancient Zoidian there with them, and Fiona and Zeke are partners. However, Shadow never had an Ancient Zoidian as his partner. Most of these organoids did. Reese had Specular, and Hiltz had Ambient. Shadow didn't have anyone besides Raven. So essentially, what I think happened is after Raven passed away, Shadow couldn't quite come to terms with that. Essentially fusing itself with the Berserk Fury and potentially going on some massive destructive rampage in some portion between Chaotic Century and New Century. Whatever happened more than likely caused a lot of people to get involved and probably could make a really cool side story between these two anime. And then at that point, the Berserk Fury more than likely had to be locked away, and that's why it's found underneath the ocean, because how can it get out from a steel box under the ocean? But that's just a theory though. I also quickly wanted to mention the theory that Vega and Bit are actually descendants of Raven and Van. Now you can see this in a few ways. First of all, it explains the Liger's attachment to Bit. Second of all, Bit could have inherited his blonde hair from Fiona, as well as the fact that Vega's presumed mother Sarah may have inherited her blue hair from Reese. There's a couple of, links here and there. It's very loose and obviously very headcanony, but I wanted to add this in there as well. There are plenty of other things that could have happened, and for all I know, the organoid system in New Century and the actual organoids in Chaotic Century are not related at all. But how cool would it have been to just get a smidge of evidence for this to kind of link the two back to each other? It would link the Berserk Fury back to the Geno Breaker and Raven, the Liger Zero back to the Blade Liger and Van, and potentially, if there was ever a season 2 of New Century, imagine there being Zoids that were actually linked to Hiltz and the Death Stinger with Ambient, and Reese and Specular, and I guess her final Zoid was the Genosaura, but that got destroyed, so Specular could have went to anything, I guess. But then in saying that, Ambient was last seen with the Death Saura, I guess, and I don't know if that would work out, but I mean still, Specular, that would have been an awesome appearance for a Zoid that was somehow merged with Specular in season 2, but alas, that will never happen. I made a video actually on a theory on what might happen in Class S in a season 2 of New Century if you want to check that out. This was definitely a bit off the cuff. Sorry if it was a bit rambly, because I really didn't know how far I wanted to go into this. I had some ideas in my head. I wanted to put them out. I know this isn't going to be a long video, but between Chaotic Century and New Century, it's such a blank space, and all we really know is that the world went on. We don't really know anything. Of course, it was nice to see callbacks to Chaotic Century, but I really would have liked to see a little bit more, as well as, of course, some remnants of what happened between the two, but all we could do is speculate like what I'm doing right now. But anyway, I've rambled on enough. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. I might not even add this into the video, but anyway, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you all for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Zoids and anime content as a whole, and potentially some gaming content later down the line with more Fire Emblem stuff. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Peace out. Bye.